as far as a favorite movie, you actually posted something recently that refired me up about the movie Gladiator.
Oh, it's so good.
So I would say Gladiator. It's there's just something about, it's tough to say Gladiator without saying Braveheart, but those two, like I've watched those more than any other movie I think ever, just because, I don't know, something about it just really, it's the underdog, it's the, the fighter,
Yeah.
And now that Gladiator 2's coming out, and like whenever that is, I don't know when.
I think this fall.
Yeah. So
it's going to be exciting.
That might be my best thing for the second half of the year too.
Do you know what people forget though about both of those movies? Because I've had a lot of people say like, oh, it's like Braveheart, Gladiator, 1A, 1B. Both of their wives are murdered. So it's like, I don't know why men are like, I can't wait to avenge the death of my wife. I'm like, how about she just doesn't die? That sounds like a good plan too. Welcome to the On the Edge podcast with your host, Scott Groves. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, Scott Groves with the On the Edge podcast here with my old front row dad friend, Josh Goodman, who has maybe the most interesting business in the world. So you're going to want to pay attention. Let me see this book real quick. He also wrote the book called Tap the Big Idea, which is about his beer company, which we're going to get into. We're drinking beer. We're smoking cigars. So apologize in advance for the background noise if you hear the air conditioning. Still 120 here in Vegas, and we'll probably be drinking. So this is going to be a fun one. All I know about Josh is you are a family man with a business, and your business does maybe the weirdest thing I've ever heard. So tell us what exactly your business does while I fire up the cigar, and then I'll let yours up.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Great to hear. So
pull that mic in a little bit closer. It's got to get a little phallic.
All right.
There we go.
There we go. Okay. So yeah, it was funny right before this started, we were talking about, how Scott started this during the pandemic, because what else are you going to do? You're stuck in your house. And I was like, fuck it, I'm going to write a book.
There we go.
So, the book really was, I would say, from several different people saying, man, you got to put these stories all in one place, because it's, starting a business is crazy. Starting a self-pour dispense business and trying to change the entire industry of how people consume beverages, that's got some, there's some scar tissue along the way. Because
the beer industry is not a small industry, right? Like you're actually talking about changing a $1 billion industry, maybe?
I don't have the stats on it, but it's, multi-billions. I mean, changing the way people consume was kind of the big difference. So you think about, like, I don't want to compare us to Uber, but, the idea that you can go on your phone and the car shows up and then you don't actually have to pull out any money and pay. Trying to do something similar, like reduce the friction of getting a drink when you go to a bar or restaurant, and not just beer. We did start out as PourMyBeer, because that was, I would say, our gateway drug into the industry.
Nice. Here, we'll have Chris edit out this weird pause while you start up your cigar there.
Little drag.
Yeah. You're gonna have to. There's your lighter. Go ahead, edit out that weird 30 seconds, Chris, where we're starting up a cigar. Yeah, because so you're gonna try to change the industry in the way that everybody drinks alcohol. So talk about, like, real quick what your product does, because I've seen it in like practice, and we're gonna have Chris like interject a clip, because it's not easy to understand.
So I guess the origin story probably is a better way to start to explain why I even created the company. Is I was going through a stage in life I was in sales. I think we have some similar backgrounds in that. So I was doing IT staffing, and I'd gotten a really shitty deal where I closed a large account for the company, and I was supposed to get $250,000 in commissions. And my CEO for the publicly traded company was like, nah, you're not getting that. In fact, we're going to give it to someone else, because the person at the company said that they didn't want to work with you directly because you didn't follow their requests of not talking directly to managers. This might sound a little complicated, but I was in IT staffing, and in IT staffing, you have to talk to managers to find out if they have openings. And he told me, the CEO said, go around the HR department, like, that's your job, to get meetings with managers, get job requisitions. So I did it, and I built the whole org chart. I found out who the key decision makers were, and then we ended up winning the account. And then he, in the final meeting, he actually was talking to the woman, and he said, "Hey, is there any reason you could see us not getting this getting this account?" And she said, "Yeah, there's one reason, Josh Goodman." And he said,
"Oh, that's painful."
So instead of, I guess, to his, defense, he was trying to do what's best for the company.
Right.
But he ended up saying, yeah, well, I'll make sure Josh Goodman never touches this account. And that was how $250,000 did not make it into my pocket and made it into someone else's. But that led me on this kind of journey of, like, I I don't like getting screwed over. I mean, I don't think anyone does, but it led me to think like, okay, well, if I don't want to work for a company, and what's the next stage of my life going to be? I got to find a problem that's big enough. And I would say, I don't know, something I could really get passionate behind.
Beer.
Beer. And so happened to be at a bar with some friends, and we couldn't get a drink. And I said, there's got to be a better way to get a drink. And my one buddy was like, well, the taps are right there, in front of us. And I was like, yeah, I should just go pour it myself. And he was like, yeah, that you should do that. And I was like, well, why can't we? We can pump our own gas, and that's legal, except for New Jersey.
Right.
Sorry for you New Jersey people, you're missing out. But so that kind of led down. I left the bar that night, and I was like, I got to figure out how to solve this problem, because I looked around the bar and I saw that we weren't the only table that didn't have a drink. It was almost every table in there that was waiting to get a beverage. And so I went home and wrote this whole kind of business plan up to like 3 or 4 in the morning of how people could get drinks without having to place a traditional order through the traditional processes.
Because if you're like a gastropub, or you're, God forbid, you're a dive bar or a college bar or something, like, it's just for the owner. The faster they can turn around those drinks, I mean, the revenue, especially you figure somebody spends 2 hours at a bar or a restaurant. I know there's been times when I've had, like, the waitress is on it. I've had like 8 or 9 beers or 8 or 9 refills of my iced tea or my Diet Coke versus like 2 or 3. And so, I mean, you got to figure the profit margin per table is monstrous.
Yeah, the math just made a lot of sense, not just from my discomfort of having to wait 20 minutes to get a beer, but the owner's losing money every time someone's glass, to your point, that we call that magic. You got to create magic for people that are at your place, magically refill the glass, magically be there and take their orders. But that's where the idea started. And my original, I would say, vision was that it was going to be like an ATM machine for beer, where you just swipe your credit card, scan your ID, and pour a beer. That was where things started. I could jump all the way to where we're at today, but this, get the book, you can read all the other stuff that happens in between. But I got in business with an Irish company that had self-serve beer tables, and they wanted to bring them to the United States. And I just happened to be this, Yankee that was enthusiastically marketing myself to them as the person to do that. And we started in 2010 and started putting beer tables all over the country.
So explain to somebody who can't see the YouTube clip that we're going to insert here on the beer table. Explain what a beer table is, because I've seen it operating and I still can't believe it's a thing.
So again, it was the true history of the beer table was in Ireland. Diageo is Guinness. So they're also Carlsberg. And in Heineken is the number one lager all over Ireland. Like, hands down, everyone in Ireland that wants a lager has a green Heineken can in their hand.
So wait, if I go to Ireland, everybody's not going to be drinking Guinness?
Oh, they will drink Guinness, but if they're going to have a lager, it's going to be a Heineken. That's something I learned throughout this whole journey.
That's so disappointing that not everybody in Ireland drinks Guinness. But anyway, go ahead. Okay.
So Diageo said they wanted to convert Heineken drinkers to Carlsberg drinkers. Carlsberg is also a green can. It's also a lager. Their theory was that if we put Heineken, or if we put Carlsberg at the table, and then instead of waiting or queuing at the bar, they would just pour their own Carlsberg instead of going up and getting a Heineken. They're
like, literally at your table, there's a tap for Carlsberg.
Yeah, so there's a tap at the table, and it's either kegs directly underneath the table, or they run beer lines to the actual taps. And that's where things started. And I would say it was more of a gimmick, in the United States. We sold 200,000 the first year, 800,000 the second year, and then we were on pace to do 1.7 the third year. And then the Irish company, surprise, surprise, they went bankrupt.
Oh,
it was a mess. And then they sued us, but that's a whole nother story. We won. I'm not spoiling the story by telling you that, but long story short, that was where it all started. And, the original intention was always to make it so people could get drinks, make it so you could, when you go out, you want to hang out with your friends, you want to hang out with the people that you are meeting there. And, if you go to even breweries today that have a traditional bar, there's a line of people waiting to get a drink. And to me, that's insanity. So, now in today's day and age with our technology, we've got over 540 locations with over 13,000 taps, pouring beer, wine, cocktails, non-alcoholic beverages, kombucha, and it's all self-service. So if you walk into Resorts World, down the street, or Bottles and Barrels, it's also another one around here. You walk in, you give them your credit card, they open a tab, and they give you a QR code or a RFID wristband or an RFID card. And now your card your credit card and your tab is connected to that QR code or that RFID device. So for the entire evening, you are your own bartender. You're pouring your own, Long Island iced tea. You're pouring your own mojito, wine, beers, and you can do it by the 10th of an ounce. So instead of having to wait for someone to bring you a 16-ounce glass of beer that you've never had before, and then take a sip and be like, this sucks, I just spent $15 on a shitty beer. Now you can try an ounce or two for like 50 cents or $1.50. And what's really cool is now we're collecting all this data about the customers, of what they're consuming, what they're going back and getting. And then when we can fill in the blanks of like, what's their age, sex, zip code, and some of these other areas, we have some pretty interesting stories we can tell.
Now, these machines, this is so interesting to me. Did you guys have to pioneer the technology? Did you merge other technologies? Do you have a patent on the whole setup? Like, because I've been to one cigar lounge that has this self-pour option. And like, you walk in, you pay for your cigar, they swipe your card, you pay your $25 for a cigar. And then they say, hey, do you want to keep the tab open? We've got, beer and wine over there on that wall. And just like, you don't even have to tip or sign out whenever you leave and you haven't poured something for 2 hours, it'll just charge your card whatever you owe. And I'm like, brilliant. Called my wife. I'm like, I'm going to need an Uber home or you're going to have to come get me. And then, I think it was like, they had maybe 3 highball drinks, like a old fashioned Manhattan, which I still don't trust out of a machine for some reason. I want the experience of having the bartender make that. But I did have like a couple beers. They had some weird red Cabernet that I never had before. So same thing. I had like 2 ounces of that just to try it. So how did the technology piece all come together? Because I mean, this has been like your life's work for like 14 years, right?
Yeah, it's definitely been my life's work. I didn't initially plan it to be my life's work. I was like any, I would say, green-eyed entrepreneur. I was like, man, this is such a great idea. 3, maybe 5 years from now, I'm going to be done. Like, I'm going to retire. Not that I would ever retire, but that
was a thought.
No, that did not happen. We're on year. I look at it in chapters or phases. So, while this is technically like the 14th year in this sector, 2015 is really where I say things got kicked off, because I had worked with the Irish company, and then they introduced me to this Austrian company that was actually the engineering behind some of the components. And we called that system the tank because it was so well built. I mean, the Austrians' engineering is just amazing. But the product did not fit what we wanted to do in the United States. And I had tried a variety of other companies to be, I would say, my partners or suppliers, where I was either a value-added reseller or some type of relationship like that. And they were all just bad. They were just shitty relationships. Either we didn't align business ethics-wise or didn't align with what we felt was quality work. And ultimately, I went to the Austrian company directly. It's funny, one of our good mutual friends, John Rulin, passed away. But we both started in the Cutco world. And so, I relate everything to Cutco because that was my first sales job. And I did the old, I'm going to be in your neighborhood, Mrs. Jones. Could I swing by and do a quick presentation for you? Well, I also did the same thing for Austria. I said, hey, Herman, that's my business partner in Austria. I was like, I know we've never met in person, but I have a meeting in Vienna, and I was going to see if maybe I could swing up to Hollabrunn while I'm in your neighborhood.
Stop by Austria. Why not?
So I did. I literally booked the ticket, and he was like, yeah, I'll be in town. Let's meet up. My intention was to secure him as a business partner and create our new product from scratch that I owned 100%, or we collectively owned 100% of. But I had the worldwide distribution rights for a product that I was going to bring to him to build together. And that was 2015 was when the prototype was ready in March of 2015. So I was literally hanging on by a thread. Like, I had taken a loan out to wire transfer to Austria, and was, I was like, this is it. I cashed out my Dunkin' Donut stock, which was my big winner of a stock. And I'd kind of floated the company through the last few years, and just a lot of challenges, through that phase. But this was it. This was going to be my big kind of like coming out party for self-pour. And so we launched it in May of 2015, and 2024, we're in 540 locations, and we've done over 600 projects all over the world. We're in 23 countries, which is just weird to say that a product that didn't exist prior to 2015 is now in 23 countries. It was actually at the Olympics recently too.
Nice.
They used it in the village. What's it called? The athletes' village.
Yeah.
They used our tech, but mainly for dispensing at the vending machines. So all the athletes had like an RFID tag that they hung around their neck, and they could use it to dispense Coca-Cola products, all throughout the.
I can't imagine a lot of Olympic caliber athletes are down in 30 ounces a day of Coca-Cola.
Well, they were the worldwide sponsor for the event. So I think they had other things in there like Dasani's and things like that. But it was, but yeah, that was, to answer your original question of like the patents and who engineered it and everything like that. Like I took all the white paper documents of all the problems I saw with how everyone else had been making and solving this problem. And really at the time, my son was 6 years old, not a little younger than your son, currently. Yeah. And I said, it's got to be so simple that my son can install it. And if he can't install it and support it, we can't grow this company. It has no chance.
Because you can't have in 23 countries, 500 locations, repairmen would be astronomically expensive. Yeah. So this is like, once you guys ship the product and you've sold the bar owner or the Scar Lounge owner or whatever on the idea, they really have to manage it themselves, right?
Well, and again, as part of the stages of kind of learning, my first goal was just get a product in the market, and just has to work. Once I got it in the market and it's working, I'd realized I'm from Richmond, Virginia, born and raised, and I have some friends that are still around that area. And they were like, hey, let's all go to Josh's new place called The Circuit in Richmond. And it was like an old retro arcade, like back in the day, but they had a 50 tap self-pour wall. And we roll up in there and there's a line around the block. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like, this is crazy. Why, how many people are inside? Why is this line here? And we go to the front and the owner, Robert, I texted him like, hey, what's up with this line? He was like, well, we can't get people onboarded fast enough. Meaning like we can't open tabs, and they had to do it. It was a dual process. So we had to open the tab on the point of sales, open the tab on our system, and then they had to do the same thing on the way out. So it was the complete opposite of frictionless. It was as much friction as possible just to get them in the door, which that led me to be like, we have to solve that problem. That's a massive problem because now people are just going to walk away because they see a line to get in.
Right.
Kind of works the reverse order of like a club. It's like, oh, everyone wants to get in there, but there's 10 other options. So we'll go to one that doesn't have a line. So that's where I went all in on point of sales integrations.
Hey, this quick interruption is brought to you by me, Scott Groves, the host of the On the Edge podcast. This podcast is brought to you by me. I'm a loan officer who can help you with a mortgage in all 50 states across the United States. I also coach loan officers. So if you are a home buyer who's looking to get a mortgage, if you're a realtor who's looking to partner with an awesome loan officer, or if you're a loan officer looking for coaching, get in touch with me. It's those sources of revenue that allow us to produce this podcast and get out a new episode to you every week for the last couple of years. So if you're looking for a mortgage, if you're looking for a mortgage lender to partner with, or you're looking for a mortgage coach, I'm your guy. Now back to your regularly scheduled programming.
For systems to work fluidly, they have to connect and kind of work off each other. So they used a point of sales called Toast. And so what happens with Toast is you swipe your credit card, you open a tab, and now with our system, you literally just connect a card to that tab and it's connected. And if they leave and don't pay their tab, who cares? It's kind of like, not paying your tab in Uber, you can't. It's locked in, So that was the big, I would say, evolution after we got the product launch was, man, we've got this great product, but we had this massive problem on the front end and the back end. I called it the hospitality hamburger. So we had an amazing, meat, like the meat in the middle of the hamburger was amazing, but the buns were terrible. They were the shittiest buns you've ever had, like the onboarding and the offboarding.
Man, that's such a relevant story to anybody watching this that has any kind of business. Because, I worked for a company, I don't even mind using them by name, Movement Mortgage, amazing mortgage company, right? Like doing all the right things, giving back to the community. CEO is still a friend of mine. And they grew so fast that we used to nickname it the daisy chain of fuckery, because it's like this system didn't talk to this system. And what ended up happening is the top producers would effectively hire either a VA, who worked in the country, of course, or a marketing assistant to basically say, okay, take the data from here, now put it into here, now replicate it over here, now put it in the CRM over there, now put it in our spreadsheet just in case all of that breaks down or changes, because it's happened a couple times. And like that friction will kill a business. So how much extra money were you making for these bars that they were willing to deal with this friction BS for a certain amount of time? Because there had to be enough value add on the revenue increase that they were seeing to be like, all right, well, until Josh fixes it, we'll deal with the friction because we're printing money right now. So do you have any stats on like revenue increase once these machines go in?
So all of our projects were new construction. So it was tough to give a install, what was your revenue, what was your cost of labor, metric. What we were able to see, a big win for me was our first location in Charlottesville that did 100,000 in a month, because we'd never done 100,000 in transactions through our system. And then they started, doubling it. And then the one in Richmond that I mentioned, they got like 250,000 in transactions a month through our system. And that's not including what they were doing through their arcade system and their food. So you got to figure they were probably doing close to, between $800,000 and $1 million a month through that location. So over the course of a year, that's a pretty big number. But for us, as we continue to get more deployments out there, we were able to match it against other comparable bars, restaurants. And the number that kept coming back, and this really highlighted during COVID, was that typically when you own a bar or restaurant, you're assuming that if you're doing $1 million a year, 300,000 of that million is going straight to labor. That's just 30% is kind of the standard number in the industry. What we were seeing is about 10 to 11% labor costs with our technology. So, that same owner that has $1 million business and they're having to pay out 300,000 in labor, now they're paying out 100,000 in labor. So that's an additional 200,000 in profits.
Before you even increase sales.
So the sales increase we estimate is around 30-40% just in general, because you can run.
Holy cow!
You can run through a lot more product in your peak times, because most bars and restaurants, they really rely on those peak windows to make the most. And what our system has shown, 10 out of 10 times is there's no amount of bartenders that can compete with the amount of transactions that we can process. And then the accuracy of that processing, like District Brew Yards in Chicago. I used to live in Chicago for 7 years. And that was a perfect example of like extremely well-run operations by well-seasoned operators. And it was 4 breweries under one roof, and they had a barbecue that was amazing called Lily Q. It's a big famous one in Chicago. But they were, he said we had 10,000 transactions go through the system on a Saturday. He said if humans were inputting 10,000 transactions, we'd easily lose $3,000-$4,000. Just not because people are trying to steal from him, but that is also another thing in that restaurant industry is theft and loss. But you cannot dispense anything unless it's tied to a credit card or an open tab. So there's just a lot of little, I would say, I call it like picket fence kind of additives to the system where, one by itself is nice, but once you throw 3 or 4 layers of different, I would say, benefits to it, it's a no-brainer. I mean, I've tempted to say, like, you are actually not a smart operator if you're not considering self-pour.
Yeah. Because if I'm thinking that business that does $1 million a month, and I got to be careful what I say here. I have some insight into this because I have a friend who's a investor in a bar, an owner in a bar. I know the bar owner group, and I've done some loans for him. So I've seen all the finances. And so I'm just thinking from my recollection and then what you just said, if you're running $1 million a month in total revenue, you save 100 or 200 grand in staffing. You add 30% more per client on a pour. So now you're probably adding another 50 or 100 grand in revenue. You're making a better client experience. So return client is probably through the roof for loyalty. Like, it's probably not absurd for you to tell these bar owners like, hey, we'll lift your bottom line 30-40% with self-pour.
Yeah. I mean, I would stick behind that as long as they've got the people walking through the door. Like, our model works. And that's actually something that we've been considering doing, is going to successful operators and saying, look, we'll fund this transition because we know your labor is going to go down and we know that your sales will increase. But that's that's a little bit more risky than just saying, hey, I'll sell you something for 50 grand.
Right.
And then we have a recurring model as well that's based off of support and software licensing, which again, we're a unique company in the sense that it's hardware and software, and it requires an entire dispense system. So, we don't really look at them as machines per se. Like with a lot of the hotels now, we're doing roll-in stations. That's kind of the first, I would say, example of like machines.
Yeah. Which it's like the entry-level drug.
It's an entry-level drug. But we have some hotels doing 35 grand a month through our system. So, think about like Hampton Inn or, Homewood Suites, any of those kind of like business type venues. So the one in Seaport in Boston, when they have 700 rooms. So your room card allows you to pour beer, wine, and cocktails, and it automatically shows up on your room charges. So you can only imagine, it's like, hey, welcome to Seaport, Scott. We got 2 Harpoon ales on draft, and there's a cocktail margarita on tap, and there's 2 wines. Help yourself. It's just going to go right to your room. Boom.
Holy shit. Yeah, because I would probably, like, if there's a line at the bar, and it's, this happens a lot. I'll go in for a speaking gig I'll fly in the night before, I'll do the speaking gig, and then I'll fly out 5 or 6 o'clock that night so I can be home to the family. If I walk in at 10 o'clock and I look over at the bar and it's loud and it's rowdy and it looks like there's a line for a drink, there is a 0% chance I'm stopping for a drink. I just go to my room and go to sleep. But if it's a room key where I can walk up to a machine about the size of this table, pour myself a beer to help me crash out from the flight and go to sleep, that's an extra $7. I'm spending $10, $12 that I would have never spent if it was just like a loud, crowded bar. Maybe in my 20s, I would have done that if I was looking for somebody, but happily married now. I get my beer, I go back to my room, I go to bed. But yeah, I mean, I can see so many like use cases for this, right? Like you go to everything now. We went to Disneyland recently. I hadn't been to Disneyland in like 15 years. And now all of the in-app functions where you can basically, stage your line pass and all this stuff, such a better experience. If I was walking through the park, and I know you can only get alcohol at California Adventures, not Disneyland, but if I was walking through the park and there was a beer dispenser tied to my phone, verified my ID, verified the information, and I could pour myself a beer while I'm waiting in an hour line at Disneyland for 45 minutes, I'm going to be blasted by the time I leave Disneyland because I'm going to probably have a drink at every ride where I have a line I got to stand in.
We might have to cut you off, Scott.
So go to whatever theme park sells beer, you need to talk to them immediately.
Well, the area that we're starting to lean into, we had our first project in the NFL last year where we had a 48 tap system in an NFL stadium, and that was a beautiful thing to witness in the sense of just the amount of traffic that it could pump through really quickly. But I can't help but think of live events, music and sporting events that it's tough to analyze how many people look at that line, like you just said, and say, fuck it, I'm not waiting in that line.
Yeah.
I want a beer, but I don't want to miss, 30 minutes of this set to go stand in a line to get a beer or a game. Like I've seen it at Phillies games. People will wait in like a 30, 40 minute line to get a drink. That's insanity to me because it's like we have the drug to solve that problem.
Yeah. I had this happen I can't remember what the new name of the stadium is. San Diego State built a new beautiful football stadium down in San Diego on like right across from where Qualcomm used to be. Went to a Guns N' Roses concert there, right? We got there early enough. The rekindled version of Alice in Chains with their new singer was playing. They're actually phenomenal. And we went, got a couple beers, like me and my buddy were double fisting beers. We walked down, we finished them by the time we got to our seats. And I'm like, I'll just run back and get a beer, knowing that the line was 45 minutes and Guns N' Roses was coming on. So I was like, nope, not going to do that. If I knew I could have just ran to a machine, been back in my seat in 12 minutes, like, all right, cool. I'll miss the opening. They usually open with Night Train. And then, okay, I've heard that song a million times. I've seen them play it in concert 20 times. I'll be back in time with 4 more beers for Josh and I. Dude, that's huge. So how do you build a moat around the company? Is it your software? Is it your personality? Is it, signing long-term contracts? Do you have patents on some of this stuff all working together? Like, I got to imagine, like, why wouldn't Dodger Stadium just be like, hey, great idea, Josh. We're going to go pay the $500,000 for development and put in our own shit. So
there's been companies that have come in and tried to do that, and they've just failed miserably and been out of business within, months of trying to kick things off.
Alexa just told us that my Wi-Fi is not working. So hopefully we're still recording, but it'll be fine.
But to answer your question, just being a subject matter expert on what we're doing, it's a very simple process. Scan a card, pour a drink, get charged for what you're gonna dispense. But there's a lot of intricacies in that. The software is very complicated. We've put at least 50 different components of software in there to make sure that it works properly without giving any of our trade secrets away. Like one would be when you walk up to a tap and it's a solenoid valve. So the valve is what opens and closes, which allows you to get access to pouring. If you just open a tap and like an ounce comes out because there's a valve there, think of it like a straw when you put your finger on top of a straw. And then like if you kind of lift your finger briefly, a little bit's going to come out and then you put your finger back down. Same concept with beer. If someone does that and then you walk up to the system after that person that opened the tap without without the valve being open, you would get charged for whatever came out. if you were using a system other than ours. We've developed technology that allows it to not charge the next person for the previous person's mistake. So it basically, it allows the first half a second to not, like if it refills the line, it's not going to charge you for someone else's thing. And there's about 50 different things like that we built into the system, as well as just even like updating the menus items. Like, if you go to any of our locations, they might have 30, 50 different products on tap. If you're going to update that, like when I first started the company, it was just me. So I sold, installed, supported. There's even not without giving too much away, there's a section in there about where I did have an employee who was our installer, and it was me doing all the sales and money management, and he was doing all the project management and installations, and I was helping out as well. But he was one of those guys that I could call him at 3 a.m. and he would pick up on the first ring, like 100% of the time. Super sharp kid, right out of college. He won this scholarship called the Hardship Scholarship. He had a really tough childhood, but his guidance counselor was like, "You're going to college, you're smart," So just one of those insanely intelligent people that could take apart any computer, put it back together. And my biggest mistake as an owner is this is the same guy he was mining Bitcoin in 2012. Lots of Bitcoin in 2012. And I was like joking on him, like, he didn't do a good job at selling me on why I should get Bitcoin in 2012, but needless to say, I did listen to him the second time around.
So he's retired, doesn't have to work for you anymore doing installs.
No, he still helped out just because he liked what we were doing. But I bring him up because in 2015, when we had just started launching and getting out there, he was transporting marijuana from California to Maryland as a side gig, and got pinched in Missouri and ended up disappearing, going to jail. But the previous part about like I would call him and he'd always pick up, he wasn't picking up. It was going straight to voicemail. So I knew something was wrong. So then I had to get in a plane and go to Seattle, do an install in Seattle, and then go from Seattle to Massachusetts, do an install in Massachusetts. And at the time I had a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old at home. My wife's working. It was absolute mayhem. But yeah, as far as the technology is concerned, we've had to evolve it over the years. So we're on version 46 of our software, of our server software. So you figure that's 7 years of development and improvements that someone who wanted to start from scratch would have to make those 7 years of mistakes. So yeah, people can enter the space. They're gonna have to go through the same challenges I went through. I think Alex Hormozy said that or something. He was like, I love when things are hard because I know that anyone that wants to come down this road is going to have to go through the shit that I went through to get to where I'm at.
Yeah, because sometimes that 7-year head start is moat enough, right? And then, it takes 25 years for somebody to come along and be Apple and be like, oh, we think maybe we can do this product better. But if you've got a 25 year head start, you already have market share. That Wi-Fi thing going off kind of freaked me out that maybe our recording did stop. So let me just double check.
Go for it.
No, it looks like we're still recording. Let me get some fresh air before we gas ourselves out. All right, cool, man. So you mentioned it's 23 countries, 500 locations.
Well, actually, we're approaching 600 right now. So yeah.
Nice. Is that why you're here in Vegas? Is there a trade show? Or are you doing an install? Or
so we've got some good relationships with Southern Glacier. They supply most of the casinos with all their beer, wine, and cocktails and liquor. So I've got some meetings with them and some other customers that we have activating. I think I mentioned we're at the Resorts World. We're also at the Link.
Where are you at in Resorts World?
It's right in that, if you look at like the food hall area,
yeah,
there's like a circular.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah, that's us.
Oh, sweet. I'm going to have to go have a beer there and send you a picture.
Please do. All my relatives do.
So I wonder do you get any pushback or any negativity around, well, I like my local bartender, right? I like to ask what kind of wine he's into. And, is there a world where a giant bar is all these machines and then there's one kind of, I can't pronounce this word, sommelier that we have in the wine world who's now like a beer and cheese sommelier who goes around and kind of give recommendations and whatnot? What's the pushback you've got from that, like that feel of being in Cheers and knowing your bartender and everybody knows your name and et cetera, et cetera?
I think there's always going to be a place for those types of venues. I mean, if you're looking at the United States as a whole, there's over 1 million bars. So
holy shit, do we like to drink?
We do like to drink.
There's 1 million bars in America?
There's 1 million liquor licenses in America. So whether it's a restaurant or a bar, there's people drinking at
1 million people locations. To drink. No wonder AA is so popular. Anyway.
It's a vice, right? So, but that being said, like we're only in 600, right? So even if we get to 10,000, then I'll fly here next time in a jet and pick you up and we'll go somewhere. But we don't need to have total market domination penetration. But what we found is that we're not getting rid of that person. We're repurposing them we have what are called like, wall ambassadors, or, what I like at District Brew Yards, they have 4 distinct breweries. So they have, Casa, it's a Mexican brewery. I can't remember the Casa something.
Casamigos?
Not Casamigos.
No, that's a tequila. Anyway, they got four different styles at the brewery.
So instead of having to go to 4 separate breweries, you go to one destination, and they've got a wall ambassador at each wall. So you have, the Burnt City Brewing. So you have the person who's representing Burnt City Brewing wearing a little Burnt City Brewing kind of patch, and they're there to tell you about what's going on with their 10 products that are right there. So you're not completely displacing that person. You're just you're taking the barrier out of the way. So you're letting them be right next to the person, have a conversation with them and say, hey, what type of styles do you like? We've got this one that just got tapped today. It literally was made. It's got, I don't know, hibiscus in it, whatever. Like, so you have that conversation still happening, but you just don't need to have, 7 bartenders pouring beers for people. Because if you look at a busy bar, there's no communication going on. It's
right.
It's, oh, you want this? Boom. I got to put it in the point of sales. Then I got to give it to you. And it's mayhem. But, with our systems, I always say, like, when we lived in Chicago, we were there from 2014 to 2021, and we had a location near Wrigleyville called Navigator Tap Room. And I was in there with my family after the game, and it was packed. I mean, to the brim packed. And the wall had 48 taps, and there was no one waiting for a drink. It was. I was almost going to shed a tear looking at how efficient the process was. But everyone had either a full or a half glass of beer. So there was no need for someone to be, running around taking orders and, people waiting in a line, and everyone was able to hang out with each other. And so I still get joy out of just seeing our locations like thrive with our technology, and, seeing them execute different ways, so we have Craft Food Hall in Massachusetts. They've got 5 locations with us. We've got a Golden Mill out in Golden, Colorado, which I literally called my wife from the venue because it's right on like a river. You can see, the Coors factory, from there. It's 2 stories, indoor, outdoor, people floating by on their little, inner tubes. I was like, Jeanette, we got to move to Golden. This place is amazing. Like, they had bike trails and running trails, and the place had like 7 different food options because it was a food hall. So, and their margaritas on tap were amazing. I implore you to sample some of these old fashions on tap and things like that, because what they've done is, even from a labor perspective in that regard, if you asked one bartender or even 2 to make 200 margaritas in front of you, it would take them an hour, maybe an hour and a half to make 200 for 200 individuals. You can make 200 margaritas in a vat for in less than 10 minutes. So just from a time and preparation perspective and a consistency perspective.
I was going to say, because all 200 of those margaritas are going to have a little bit different pour, a little bit different salt, a little bit different infusion of the sugary whatever syrup they put in that stuff.
Yeah.
So this is just, you're constantly getting the same drink.
Yeah, and it's great. These are made by the same mixologists that that would typically be behind the bar mixing it up, for one person. Instead, they're doing it for 200 people, and that's what I love to see. I mean, I don't know if you're familiar with Punch Bowl Social.
Yeah.
So the founder of that just became a board member with our company, nice. And he's been launching what's called Jaguar Bolera, which is its own. There's no bars. It's all self-service, and it's entertainment. And he's going to do another concept called Camp Pickle. Again, all self. He said it was 80% easier for him to open up Jaguar Bolera than all the Punch Bowl Socials combined. He was like, it was just a night and day difference, because you have to train every bartender and test them, multiple times to make sure that when they make that drink, it tastes the way it's supposed to taste. And they're doing like the little straw taste samples.
Yeah.
He said, that's gone. You don't have to do that anymore. It's self-pour and everything's consistent. So from an operator perspective, again, it's just a no-brainer,
So I understand the beer pour totally. Like, obviously I've tapped a keg and I know how to pour my own beer. When it comes to the mixed drinks, without giving away any of your trade secrets, how do you, I don't understand multiple ingredients, right? Are they in like different vats and then they mix at the tube? Do you mix them? Because I got to think certain drinks, if you mixed all of the ingredients and it sat there for 4 days, it might ferment in a different way or taste a different way. Like, how are you overcoming the mixed drinks? That's the one I don't understand.
So I learned, I forget how complicated and complex the drinks industry is as a whole. But I remember the first project I ever did, I was a big Trogs guy. I still am. I love Trogs. It's a great craft brewery. But the owner of the bar that was going to put one of our mobile stations in, I was like, you got to put Trogs on tap. And he was like, I'm not putting Trogs on tap. He was like, the products that are on tap are already spoken for. Like the distributors are going to come in, and I don't want to put them on blast, but they're going to come in and get a $500 hamburger every Wednesday, and I'm going to put their products on tap. That's kind of the under the table agreement. I say that because there's layers within the distribution channel. So it's, they have the full, I would say, they get to choose whatever they want to put on tap. When it comes to cocktails, think of it as just a large glass. So they're mixing it in a keg that has a removable top, and they put all the ingredients in there. And to your point, yeah, if you left it there sitting there for 4 days, it would take the bottom, all the liquor would probably go to the bottom.
It'd settle or something, yeah.
So there's two ways you can do it. You can have an automated like ball bearing that's in there with magnets, and it keeps spinning around nonstop.
This makes sense.
So that's the way that like Micromatic is solving that problem. Or one of our customers, Tapster, they're in about 6 locations or six parts of the country right now. They just shake it before every shift. So it's like, hey, did you shake the kegs before the shift? And I've been there. Like I've worked a shift there just to see how they do it. And literally they just walk in and they shake each one, violently, and then they're good. It's never been an issue.
Oh my God. And are we allowed to ask how much these machines cost?
Yeah. So, I mean, we typically charge around $2,000 a screen. And that's going to be for 1, 2, 3, or 4 taps per screen.
Okay.
Most of our customers are doing 2 to 3 products as an option on a screen. There's really no financial reason to do 1 tap per screen other than you just like the aesthetics of it. But if you're paying $2,000 a screen, I would always encourage people to go with 2 or 3 taps per screen. And we have locations doing over 600, almost 700,000 a month through our system with 2 and 3 taps per screen. So the number of taps per screen does not determine how well you'll do financially with our system.
And I'm sure you guys have solved this problem, but of course the first thing that comes to mind if you have like 3 different beers coming out of the same tap, are the first ounce of my Corona Light brown because the last guy poured a Guinness, or like...
So it's 3 separate taps. So it's like, I'll have to find a picture to share your audience. I'm sure you're see. Yeah. Well, this is what the beer tables looked like. They had the taps coming out of the table.
Yep.
I don't know if I have a picture. I should have a picture in here, but essentially it's not sharing the tap. It's 3 individual taps under the screen.
Got it.
So yeah, so you never have to worry about any cross contamination or like, oh, this dark beer now has kind of a flavor of a IPA or whatever. It's just,
right. They're
all separate.
So how many times did you almost go broke or go broke building this company? Because I feel like every entrepreneur that's made it is like, oh yeah, I had to steal from Peter to pay Paul 37 times to make it. My wife was not so happy.
My Britney Spears moment, I would say.
Your total meltdown?
My total meltdown was...
Did you shave your head and everything?
Yes. Yeah.
You did for real?
Yeah.
Oh my God, yeah. I love it that you actually shaved your head. Yeah. I can't even afford haircuts. I got to shave these beautiful locks of mine.
It was 2014. My business partner that I started the company with, Declan, we were on fumes, and I think we only had like $4,000 left in the checking account. And he was like, I need to get paid this month. And I was like, no, dude, like I don't have enough to pay like vendors. We have $100,000 in debt. And thankfully, I mean, he's an amazing, salesperson, and just, he was able to, one of his old, I guess, employers tapped him on the shoulder, like, dude, we would love you to come back. We'll pay you a ton of money and give you equity in our company. And he was like, I got to take this opportunity. So then I'm left hanging with this company that's got $100,000 in debt, no real like future with a partner. Like the Austrian company didn't exist yet in 2014 with our partnership. And I just, being an athlete without like patting myself on the back, like I played college football, I set the school record in tackles, like I wrestled, I was, undefeated going into the state finals. I'm super competitive. I'm learning.
Does that mean you lost the state finals?
In overtime.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah. That's actually a crazy side story. This fucking news article came out, and the guy wrote as the first part said, if you see the name Josh Goodman come across your desk in the next few years for a resume, hire him immediately, but don't ever ask him to work overtime.
It's pretty funny.
Because I lost in overtime in wrestling in the state finals, and we lost in overtime in football in the state semifinals.
In high school or college?
High school, yeah.
High school, oh.
So, but I was super competitive, and I'd done well in sales. Like in my 20s, I was making in the mid 100s, which was
selling knives, which is crazy to me. The number of people I know that have made $1 million plus selling knives is still, it's unfathomable to my little brain. So
Hey,
Cutco.
Do you have some Cutco? I mean,
Yeah. No, I got the whole block in there.
Okay.
I actually have the whole block in there from John Rulin. He donated one for like a charity event that I went to. So
awesome.
Rest in peace, John Rulin. But yeah, man, you guys and your fucking knives. All right, so you're good at sales. But I had all that
success, and then like with entrepreneurship, you just get kicked in the dick over and over and over and over, and then you're like, I don't even feel my balls anymore. Like, how can you keep like this is
right.
It's terrible.
Totally.
And so, Declan left. I had $100,000 in debt, and this company Glass Tender, who I'd owed 80 of it to, was like, dude, we need something. You need to commit to something. And I told my wife, I'm like, fuck it, I'm training for MMA or something. Like I'm so angry and wanted to punch holes in people's faces just because I had a lot of childhood trauma as well, in that regard, getting picked on and bullied in middle school. So I was like, I got to take this aggression out on something, because I know if there's $100,000 on the other side of beating a person, I can beat that person, So I started. I shaved my head and I was like, this is what I'm going to do while I'm still trying to keep the business going. Cause
wait, your backup plan after not fighting or wrestling for like 4 or 5 years was you're going to go be an MMA fighter?
Well, maybe not MMA, just whatever I could do to fight to make money. That was it. This was not a drawn out plan. I was just super angry.
This was not well thought out.
Not at all.
You're like, I'm strong. I used to wrestle. I'm mad. I can punch people.
Yeah. And I'm crazy. It's, I used to be. I'm a lot more mellow now.
Yeah. We tend to calm down in our 40s.
Yeah. Kids do that.
So, all right. So then how do you make it out of that? Like there's no runway. Even if the plane ticket to Austria was probably more than $4,000. Like, how the fuck do you turn it around?
So I was able to get a few deals to fall in a pretty short amount of time. Actually, Labatt in Canada at the time, they'd spent $100,000 with us, which was huge, to deploy our system in Calgary. Actually, Regina. I don't know if you
never heard of it.
Regina's. They say it's the city that rhymes with fun.
Nice.
Anyways,
it's really called Regina.
Well, it's Regina. It looks like Regina, but it's pronounced Regina.
Regina. Oh,
rhymes with fun.
Yeah, I get it.
So, needless to say, like that happened right around. The craziest part is there was in 2014, right when all this was happening, had just shaved my head. My wife's like, "What are you doing?" Like, actually, she played college basketball. She's in the Hall of Fame. I always joke like that's how I got in the Hall of Fame, because she took my last name and she's in it. But when I was like at my lowest and I was like talking really negatively about myself, I'm like, I'm a fucking loser. Like, I put everything into this. Like, I know I'm talented. Like, but I'm a loser. Like, I'm such a huge failure. And she was like, she didn't say anything mean. She just said, do you know how unattractive it is to see you talk about yourself that way? And she just said it real calmly. And that hit, that hit right where it needed to hit. And I was like, okay. And like anyone, you go on a long run or do something, start doing something to kind of like get some of that energy or negative energy out of your body. But then a few positive things happened. In fact, Bloomberg put us on, they interviewed me because like 2013 and 14, we invested pretty heavily in SEO with the little money we did have. So when one of our competitors got into the All-Star game, the baseball All-Star game, they were like, "Oh, self-serve beers at the All-Star game. We gotta do a news article about this." So Bloomberg contacted me because when they searched self-serve beer, we were the first ones that came up. And they didn't ask, "Hey, are you at the All-Star game?"
Right. They just kind of assumed.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And I was like, I very politically said, "Oh, we're very excited about Self-Pour being at the All-Star game. Extremely excited, over the moon excited about Self-Pour being at the All-Star game." Not once saying it's our technology, but we did a whole interview and a few leads came in from that, pretty shortly after. So that was, I would say I didn't actually have to end up going into fighting, but I will say like I've remembered that time vividly. It's scarred into my, and it also creates a little fear. Like I never want to feel that way again, where I don't have the capacity to take care of things, to take care of, myself, the company, So now we have 27 employees and, that there's the ebbs and flows of every business. And when you have 27 employees, you're like, got to make sure we make payroll, got to make sure you can pay your vendors. And there's been times over the last, probably 7 years where either myself and, other leadership members have foregone pay to keep the company going. And I always say, I may not get things right 100% of the time, but I make them right 100% of the time. And, when our leadership team steps up like that, I'm in their corner in more ways than they probably recognize. And And we did an announcement like 2 weeks ago where everyone in our company has options in our company now, which was kind of a big step forward. Originally, it was just like our top leadership team members or top contributors had some options, but I was like, you know what? Everyone's, shoulder to shoulder. We're all pushing this thing the right direction, and I want everyone to win. When this gets to 50, 100 million, and whether we sell or whether we just split profits, whatever. I just think it builds a better culture.
Yeah. And because I got to imagine you're selling the machines at a profit, and then you have this software reoccurring revenue model. Like, the margins have to be pretty good for you as a business, right? Or is it just constantly you're reinvesting into new marketing, new software updates, new locations, like
R&D. So we're going to be launching a new version of our system that's all cloud-based, probably the end of this year, early next year. That's $1 million in itself, just
$1 million to take it offline and go to the cloud.
Yeah, because
didn't like Amazon Cloud Services solve this problem now? You can do it for like $29 or something.
If any of your listeners have a better way to do it, I'm always open to entrepreneurial ideas. But yeah, we've had numerous quotes, and we've been moving forward with our first phase one was getting our billing platform out there, because recurring revenue models are difficult to manage. I don't think there's really any company that I'm aware of that's doing it at scale very well. I've talked to companies that are doing $20 million a year, and I said, what model or what software are you using to manage your recurring revenue? He's like, they're all shit.
Yeah.
So we built our own just to manage all of our recurring revenue. And our model is pretty simple. It's $100 per location, or $105, and then $22 per screen after the first screen. So if a location has, for easy math, 21 screens, and let's say that's 42 taps, the first screen would be $105, and then each additional screen is $22. So roughly $545 a month recurring revenue.
I feel like you should up that charge.
Probably should, yeah.
Yeah.
And then we do integration fees, which are around $750 a year or $75 a month. And that allows us to continue to make sure that the integrations are working, because for 10,000 transactions to be flawless at a location, like, we have to make sure every endpoint is working all the time. And we hired a CTO. I think I skipped over the part where I sold 25% to Coca-Cola, but
wait, you sold 25% of your company to Coca-Cola?
Yeah. And so in 2019, one of our current investors introduced their portfolio of companies, which at the time was like 11 companies. So branded strategic, they're based out of New York City. They were originally a customer of ours. They own like 30 restaurants in and around the Manhattan area. Kind of a fun side story is when I was getting to know them, they said one of their partners is named Dean, and he's named after Dean Martin because that was his godfather. And their family started the Sands Casino in Vegas.
Oh, yeah.
So
we know who they are.
So they said, don't lose the money ultimately. But great guys, great business model with investing in restaurant technology. They introduced their portfolio to Coca-Cola Europe Pacific Partners. Out of all the portfolio companies, they said they wanted to talk to us because we checked a few boxes that they were interested in. Guest experience. They're also in the business of renewing contracts with large companies like Burger King and Popeyes and all the places that sell their products. So our technology would allow them to secure those contracts, because instead of buying a brand new $7,000 soft drink machine, they could give them our little screen, or call it $1,000 or $1,500 or whatever, and it tied when you go to Burger King in Madrid now and you order a Whopper combo, you get a QR code that allows you to pour soft drink from the machine. So it's a checks and balances perspective. But yeah, so 2019 we started talking, and they had several conversations with me, and then I was over in Austria that following, I was in Austria that September, and then we got to the point where they actually had a press release that we signed the terms of agreements in like Christmas Eve 2019. And I was like, awesome. Like, this is definitely going to happen. February 2020, it was like February 13th. And we were right at the tail end of the due diligence and getting all the, I had to transfer from an LLC to an Inc. and lots of lawyers involved, lots of money being spent to get this deal done. And then we were right at the finish line. We had the press release ready. Their CFO had already talked to our bank to make sure that, the millions of dollars that was going to come into the United States would make it there. And then COVID happened. So nothing got invested. I had accumulated around $60,000 in legal fees. And all of our customers were shut down overnight. So that was, talk about kicks in the nuts. That was a big one.
So did you end up not selling 25%?
So then we ended up doing, April, May was crazy.
Right.
June, we came back and had like a $250,000 a month or $300,000 a month. And then July, we had another like big month. And then they came back to the table in August and said, hey, we're still interested in making this investment if you're willing to do it under the same terms that we had originally. September 5th, which was a day after my anniversary, the money hit the account and Coca-Cola bought 25% of the company. So that
Holy cow.
That was 20. So 2020 is, it was a wild year. And then not to go like high then low again, but so that was September, super high, millions of dollars hit our account. It's Coca-Cola. I mean, who's not heard of Coca-Cola in the world, right?
Right.
So we were able to use that capital to go, take a lot of our competitors' customers and transition them pretty quickly and aggressively. A friend of mine, Matt Price, when the money came in, I was like, "What would you do?" Because he's built and sold companies. He was like, "Go get some fucking wins," and so that was my go get some fucking wins, right? And then in like November, my son, who at the time was at 2020, so he was 11. We found that he had a tumor on his spine. So we had to, that was, going from an extreme high to like, what does that mean? He's got a tumor on his spine. And the neurosurgeon said, look, if it's my son, I'm getting it taken off. It was a lipoma. So it was just a fatty tumor. It wasn't like a growing cancerous thing, but we had to make the call that we had to, schedule his surgery for February. So knowing that Chicago, January is pretty much a shitty time to be in Chicago, especially when kids are remote and they're doing school from home, we said, fuck it, we're moving to Florida, which at that time of the year or that time of COVID, January 2021, COVID didn't exist in Florida. It was
right.
like this crazy drive past the Mason-Dixon through Georgia and then it just
doesn't exist.
So the kids had a great, January, and then we spent a month and a half in the hospital and my son had 11 surgeries over that period. And I tell you, to this, like, there's so many things that I could comment about that stage in our lives, like as a husband and wife, like that's tough to go through. You see your son on an operating table for 11 hours, and then he's learning to walk again, like
at 11.
At 11, not learning to walk like in the sense of like he's forgotten how to walk, but like he was under a knife for 11 hours and then on his back for like, 2 weeks. So there's a little bit of atrophy that I'm sure takes place. But man, like actually that was one of the first front row dad, like, VIP experiences I had. It was after he came back and then played football the following year. And I was with Jason Bronstead and we had a little 101 and he was like, I think the question was something like, something that you're proud of about your kids. And I hadn't shared it, but like, my son played on a football team and he didn't really play that much. Like he's, he just came back from the back surgery and, he's he's usually the youngest one on the team. And there was a game right before that VIP event where he got in, the kid ahead of him got injured and he played the whole game. And I just remember seeing that smile on his face at the end of the game, like how happy he was. And I was just bawling, like, with Jason. I was like, I've never been more proud of another person in my life, to see someone go through what he went through and then, just see that smile, that genuine kind of, enjoyment on his face after all that pain. Like, it's like he's forgotten about all that, but, lots of ups and downs,
Yeah. And now he's like getting ready to go to college, right? Like,
so he's
14, 15
freshman in high school. I think he's probably wrapping up his freshman football practice right now, but I mean, he's big into basketball and big into football, but he's a great kid, yeah.
Well, I don't think that happens on accident, man. So kudos. Where do you go from here, right? So I've got to think Coca-Cola buys 25%. Do they start making all the introductions? And then, I think for future growth of a company, it's like you can grow internally. Like you said, you could sell, you could go public one day. You could get to a revenue point where Coca-Cola wants to buy 25%. And now you have retirement FU money. Like where does all of it go from here? Because it seems like if you can get in front of more people, it's kind of a no-brainer.
So locations create more locations. And I think that I don't know when that tipping point is. what I've shared with our team is over the years, you think like you lay in Buffalo Wild Wings, oh, that's going to be our jumping off point, or we lay in Hilton, which we are in Hilton. That's going to be our jumping off point. And we're making progress with all these accounts, but I've just come to I've learned to accept that, like, I don't know when that tipping point is.
Like that hockey stick growth. Yeah.
But I mean, we were just on the Inc. 5000 for the 4th year in a row. And
congrats, man.
And this was our highest ranking ever, on there. So it's exciting to see consistent growth. Our biggest year of growth was like a 60% jump.
Holy shit. That's a lot.
But you see, like, it's cool when you look at like over time. So over the last like 6-7 years, we do like 2 years exactly the same. And then we bump 50 to 60%, 2 years exactly the same, and then bump another 50, 60%. I don't really understand why that is, but
it's probably you.
we get pulled into these conversations like these food halls. And again, it's tough to deny the impact of it when you physically go to a location as an operator and see someone else executing at a level that, that they could or should be. And it's funny, like one of my friends played for the Packers, and he introduced me to this guy in Milwaukee when I was there, like 2012. And the guy and I stayed in touch. He owns a bunch of steakhouses. His name's Omar. If you live in Milwaukee, you've definitely eaten at plenty of his places, but he was opening this food hall called 3rd Street Market. And I was like, dude, you're opening a food hall. Like we got to do business. And he was like, oh, I don't know if it's the right, fit for what we're doing. And then like he randomly went to Minneapolis, and saw one of our locations, Malcolm Yards. And he sends me this video. He's like, why didn't you tell me this was working this well? I'm like, I did. It's like,
I've been trying for 12 years to tell you how well.
Do you see the text thread? It's all there. And then so he contacts me. He's like, yeah, we got to put this in there, and they're crushing it. And I think people are just slow to adapt to it.
Yeah, change is hard, man. Nobody likes change.
Yeah, and it's frustrating at sometimes, but I also get so much enjoyment out of seeing our customers win. Like, just my son's 15th birthday.
I had to uncap my own beer. What kind of bullshit is this? I'm going to need to buy a dispenser for here just so that I can say, look, this is Josh's product. You go dispense your own beer.
We can make things happen.
Do I get the Front Row Dad discount? It's only like $2,200 for,
yeah.
I'm trying to think what I would put in there. I'd probably put like Corona Light. That's like a go-to summer beer. I'd probably put Modelo Negro because I like that for the darker beer. And then for all my hippie friends, I'd have to put some super weird, bitter IPA, like
sour.
like an 800 calorie IPA. Anyway, I digress. Wow. I lost train of thought.
Now you were just saying, where
the growth. Yeah, where do you go from here?
We just want to continue to do, like, we are branching off into the non-alcoholic. Like we just did a thing with Health Aid. They're looking at our We're trying to make the process easier. So one of the things that we just added recently was there's two big, I would say, progressions. One is called Pay Pour. So you literally can use your phone or your credit card to just swipe and then pour. So now you don't have to go open a tab. We have a nightclub in Miami that's opening up with our system. That's going to be 50 taps, and it's called Throw Social. I'm kind of excited for them to open just to go and not have to wait in a line to get into the Miami nightclub. But that's a spin off of our concept where it's pay and pour. Another one we're doing is memberships, where it's like if you're a member at a country club or any club and you have a QR code, it's like like a wallet, like where you just when I go to the YMCA, it automatically pulls up my little pass key. So it would be the same concept, and it automatically goes to your member account.
Yeah.
So that's another step. All these apartment complexes, things like that, we can add our tech to that. So then when you're joining a new facility, like if you're going to own a condo there, you get the access pass to pour your wine or cocktails or non-alcoholic. So we're just putting ourselves in conversations that, where people might not be aware that we even exist, which it's so weird to me to know that as hard as we've worked over the last, call it, I'd say 2015 and now 9 years, people still don't know we exist.
Getting in front of 1 million people is hard. Really hard.
Well, we had 10 million people use our system over the last, I think, 2 years.
380 million Americans to go.
So yeah, it's a...
And a couple billion worldwide. It's so funny. You got to flip the top. I think about all the people I know in Front Row Dads, a lot of which came from Cutco, but just like a myriad of different life backgrounds and locations and socioeconomic and all the things. You started out selling knives, and now you are the CEO or the president or
founder and CEO
of a multi-million-dollar business. Like, how have you had to grow, or who have you had to become? Because there's a much different skill set from doing one-off sales to like managing 27 people and international accounts and international billing and compliance. And I got to imagine there's a shit ton of compliance so that you can ensure the operator of the establishment, like, no, you're not going to have 8-year-old Gabriel up pouring a beer and getting you in trouble with the Bureau of Alcohol. So like, how have you had to grow, or what are the skill sets you've had to learn, or how are you investing in yourself to like meet this challenge?
So there's a term someone mentioned to me a while back that it kind of nails it on the head. You have bootstrap hangover. So there's a combination of, when you're just trying to keep the doors open, keep the lights on, keep the business alive, you're the way you view $1 or 1,000 or 5,000 or 10,000, it's you're stuck in that mindset. And I'd never really joined like a mastermind group or like gone to those events, because I was like, man, I wouldn't spend $5,000 or $10,000 on myself. Like, I'm not worth that. Like, that could be going towards marketing or do this or that. And I would say that was, speaking of John Rulin, that was one of the big things he brought to my life in 2013-ish, 14, around where I was in that dark stage. He had said to me, like, dude, like, this is going to take off. Like, I know it. Like, I meet people all the time. You've got it. Like, this is going to make it. And then he invited me to like Wedding Crash, an event that he was at, where he had spent $10,000 to be there, and let me kind of just come to the after, like the after party or whatever it was, like at the hotel bar. And he's introduced me to all these people, like, Dave Asprey, who started Bulletproof, and Dan Martell, and all these people I'd never really heard of or met. But once I learned about them, like, wow, like they're crushing it. And he introduced me to them like I'm the guy that they should know. It was such a weird kind of like, I would say, imposter syndrome-ish kind of experience. But to answer your question, I think it's having people believe in you when your belief isn't, maybe it's beaten down a little bit, and then having the balls to invest in yourself with those types of things. Like, the first event I got qualified to go to, you had to do $3 million in revenue, which, our business literally just barely did it the previous year, 3.1. And then I interviewed went through the interview process to join that mastermind group, and it was $10,000. But the quality of the people that you get to interact with, and the mindsets, and everyone solved any problem you're trying to solve. No matter what that problem is, someone solved that. And if you're hanging out with, people that have already solved those problems, like you have kind of a superpower. And Front Row Dads has been an amazing group of men that I've gotten to get to know in various stages. I mean, I listened to your episode with Ali. I just went on a 42-mile hike with Ali in Olympic Park, and Philip Stutz, who was also on your podcast.
They talked you into it.
Yeah, but just amazing people, just, I wouldn't have those conversations at my local bar.
Right.
I probably wouldn't have those conversations with, a lot of people I grew up with. But when you're talking to people that are doing cool shit, you can't help but share ideas, and you all want to see each other win. Like, and actually Philip even said this. He was like, "How the fuck is your business not doing $1 billion?"
That's Philip. That's so Philip. I was complaining about something at one of the Front Row Dads things, and he's like, "Hey Scott, I'm just going to politely tell you, shut the fuck up, because you've complained about this now for 3 events, and if you're not going to fix it, just shut the fuck up and accept it." And I was like, all right, love you, dude. Yeah. I'm going to go home and either fix that or just accept that that's just part of my life, and that's okay. And it turns out I did both. So funny how that happens.
But if you don't have friends like that, you're not going to, like, I don't know.
You're not going to take action.
You're not going to take action. Yeah.
Yeah. So tell us about a hire in the company that you were scared shitless to make, and you're like, oh, thank God I spent that money.
Well, we've gone through some ebbs and flows, like any business. So 2020, at the end of 2021, we had a good year, but my COO he was like, "Hey, like, I'm burnt out. I'm taking another job doing something else. Like, I got to go." And I had already signed a 5-year lease to put a warehouse literally 5 miles from his house.
Oh.
So I was like, couldn't you told me this in July, dude?
Yeah. Things that would have been nice to know 90 days ago.
Yeah, that was a whole other thing. But then I went on this search for a COO who had scaled and sold companies. And so then I found him, and we put this options package together that was going to be pretty lucrative. And I was going to pay him, $200,000 a year. And I did for a year and a half. And then, realized that it wasn't the right fit, but he did help move a lot of things forward that, not to say someone that you pay $100,000 can't or isn't capable of, but there's a level of urgency and a level of, I would say, intelligence, maybe, and grittiness that came with that investment. And I can look at that and say, okay, that's the most I've ever paid for any person to ever work with our company outside of a salesperson, but they kind of kill what they eat.
Right.
But I don't regret it. And it's actually his departure, he resigned, has really given us a whole nother, like, I would say, burst of wind, because there were some cultural misalignments there where I was I'm a sales guy. And I've always worked under the opinion, like, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And if you don't build relationships with your team, you're just an asshole tyrant, Yeah. And so you get the right to have tough conversations with people when you learn about, their background, their history, their traumas. I mean, I learned that there's people in our company that have beaten breast cancer. There's people in our company that lost a sibling at a young age from suicide. There's so much depth to the people in your organization, but you don't get the right to talk to them or try to motivate them if you don't learn about them. And not to divert the question, but it's like, that was the most I've ever, invested financially into somebody. Again, no regrets in that, other than probably could have had him resign earlier.
Yeah.
But it opened my eyes to see, like, okay, I need to be on the search or on the lookout for more people that can bring that level of tenacity and, I would say, grit to a company without the negatives.
Yeah. It's so hard for us salespeople, I think, just in general, because, like, when we go to hire people, we want to hire people like us, but a lot of times we need people that are the exact opposite of us to balance, like, a thriving company. And it's just hiring and firing. I mean, there's a reason there's a whole subculture industry or boutique industry on, like, hiring and firing expensive employees, because it's hard, man. It is not easy to find good people that are worth $100,000 that are also in cultural alignment, who you're also going to work with, but you're not just hiring a replica of yourself. It's brutal.
And remote work, I've still not figured that out. It's tough. There was a salesperson I let go. I had my mom send in, or I filled out a quote request. And, I'm a Cutco guy. If a lead came in, I'm calling them within seconds of it hitting my inbox. Like, my phone ring or my phone dings. Oh, got a new email. Oh, it's a quote request. Oh, they're serious. I'm calling them. And I loved the idea of them being on our website as I'm talking to them. We had a salesperson who my mom was visiting us, and I put my mom's name in there, like Elizabeth, but a different name, not Goodman, her cell phone, and said, I've already got a place. I'm putting a deposit down with another company called iPort in the next 2 weeks, but I heard about your company. I'd love to talk to a salesperson to see, what the differences are. That email came in at like 3 p.m. on a Thursday. I didn't get a response. My mom's phone did not ring until the next day at like noon. And I lost my shit. I'm like, dude, like, no, like that's not acceptable, but it's tough. Like, you don't want to constantly have to check your people. Like,
right.
I trust my sales team today.
What is, like, the standard operating procedure for your team? Like, respond within an hour, half an hour, same day?
If it's in the cigar, what did you put in this thing? If it's within business hours, which I say is like 6 or 7 p.m., within an hour, preferably the sooner the better. And it's not an email. It could be a text, but that's not the first way. You call, then you text, then you email, and we have sequences like any company does.
Right.
But there's still nothing that you can't get that first impression back. And that, like, even on Sunday, and I practice what I preach. On Sunday, we got a request from a gentleman, and I know that our West Coast director's out on vacation, and I saw it come in on Sunday. I'm like, I'm calling the guy. I literally call him, talked to him for about 35 minutes, took the notes, put it in HubSpot, tagged the salesperson, emailed the person back, BCC'd our whole sales team to show them, like, hey, look, I'm not just saying, hey, do this, do that. I'm doing it, And I just think it even with installs, like, I think as a leader, you have to get out there and work with your people. You have to do installs. You have to be able to take a support call. And even, like, telling them, like, hey, if someone's cursing at you, if a customer of ours is calling our support line and they're cursing at you, here's how you handle that. You don't deserve to get cursed at. So let them know, hey, I'm here to solve your problem. But if you need to curse at somebody, Josh's cell phone is right here. and you can call him and you can curse at him because he's told me that I don't have to take curse words. But I think other organizations are just like, they brush over that. They don't try to protect their team. They don't try to protect they think it's okay to get cursed at, yelled at. And as we've learned through Front Row Dads, like when people are yelling at you or doing something to you, they're upset with themselves. That's a little deeper maybe than the question, but
No, they're definitely upset with themselves. They got problems with their own rent. I think about the dichotomy of what you just said, because like I love the idea of like, yes, the leader can get in there and make a sales call and do an install, and if you need to transfer an irate customer to me, cool, go for it. I love that at like such a deep level. And then for you, because I want to see you win, I'm like, well, can you scale to $1 billion if you're doing that? It's like, where do you draw the line of divorcing yourself from the business? I'll tell you a little story. I love this company called I Am Project X. They do like gym wear and apparel that's all got like this Hawaiian flair to it. Very first time I ordered from them, they made me a client for life. Cause like I ordered like a $50 pair of like workout trunks or whatever. And they're super cool. I love the designs. They like got me on Instagram or something. I'm like, this shit's going to be cheap. I just wasted $50. Came really good quality. And then there was a little postcard in there with a bunch of like free Hawaiian stickers. And the postcard said, I'm embarrassed, I don't remember his name. Hi, I'm Ted, blah, 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 blah. Thanks for buying. This is a homegrown company. If you have any customer concerns about the product, this is my cell phone. No, really, this is the cell phone where my mom texts me. Give me a call if you have any problems. So I texted him. I was like, is this really you? And he's like, no, it's really me. And he came back with like a blue bubble. So I knew it was an iPhone. So I'm like, oh, this isn't even like a CRM. So sure enough, I ordered some more stuff. And then I ordered something, and I was missing like 2 garments, right? So like I bought like $500 worth of clothes and like $100 was missing. So I emailed him. I'm like, hey man, the shipping, something didn't come through, whatnot. And half an hour later, they emailed me back. They're like, hey, we reviewed the videotape of the packaging of your product and it's all there. And I wrote back, I'm like, the fuck you pulled the videotape from, I didn't say fuck, but there's no way you pulled the videotape in the last half hour of Maria packing my stuff. And there's no way you have that on file, and there's no way you found it in a half hour and got back to me. They sent me the video clip. They're like, here's Maria stuffing your package. Sure enough, I pulled that out, and somehow 2 of the shorts had slid together in the same package, and it was there. And I was like, holy shit, I'm so embarrassed. I went on and bought like $500 more worth of stuff for wasting their customer service time, but it was so good. And you could tell from that very first postcard, that level of like commitment to excellence came from the top down. So it's like, I can feel that in you and your company. And then like, who's the next person you got to scale or hire to scale to $1 billion?
I think that, we've got a whole investment deck. We're bringing in a round of capital right now. It's under a convertible note. What we've outlined is, we have to evolve our product. So without saying it's the person, we have to evolve our product. We have to align our systems. We've got great systems. I mean, to deliver, we have 90 projects right now that we're delivering over the next 6 months. So that's 90 new installations all over the country, happening simultaneously. So we've got good systems in place, and our current COO, Scott, who's, he's the guy that left in 2021, came back in 2022.
Nice.
And was a project manager, and now he just got promoted to COO back in his old seat. But I believe we're gonna have to evolve the product so it's not going to require as much salesmanship. I don't know if that's the Modella's hit me, I guess. I think chief revenue officer at some point. Product managers. People that own specific products. Like we're trying to launch other variations of our product that work with self-pour, like self-serve slushies. Mm-hmm. So that could be something that could get pretty big. Also, colleges and universities have integrated with a company called Pater that we're integrated with. So we see that as a big opportunity. But just being able to manage going from 15 projects a month that we're delivering, of the 90, we're delivering about 10 to 15 a month of new activations, getting to the point where we're like the product in its current state, I don't want to say we can't, 10X, but it would be a sloppy ass 10X.
Right.
And we break a lot of things along the way versus we launched this new product. It's cloud-based. It's intuitive. All the screens are connected to the cloud. If one's not connected, we get notified. We can be proactive on support. I mean, we're looking at all our numbers. I mean, of the 500 plus calls we get a month for support, 80% of them are training based. So that's a huge opportunity to lower the amount of support calls. And as you know, with a business, you can dial into any part of the business that you know is, I guess, an obsess over it. But even like leads, like I think only 30% of our current leads make it from lead to deal. That's disgusting. It's not because that our salespeople aren't, you know, converting them. We just get shitty leads. You know, we're creating a bunch of crappy leads of people that aren't really serious about moving forward. So, you know, I guess when it comes down to what takes us to that next level, I think it's the product evolving, but it's also putting in the systems in place to, you know, to simulate that Josh gives a shit, you know, I would say vibe. I don't know if you ever saw CD Baby. That was kind of the,
no.
So the guy that started CD Baby, it's an email, I'll send it to you afterwards. You can share with your listeners, but he did something similar. Like when anyone ordered back in the day, if you wanted to get a CD burned, this company CD Baby, that's where all the musicians would go to, and they'd just say, hey, you can sell our CDs. And so when you'd get a CD from CD Baby, it looked like a handwritten note, and it said, you know, our entire team hand packed this together with, you know, we had a celebration for you specifically, Scott. We marched it down the middle of the main road in, you know, Vermont or wherever it was. And we delivered it to the post office, and we all had a celebration in your name. You know, we hope you have as much joy in your product as we did delivering it to you, that type of thing. But it was just that email or whatever, like that they got as a receipt that their CD was on the way. That went viral, you know? So I think just continuing to be playful with things like that, but I just got an email from a customer the other day, actually today, about, he was a customer from 2014 in Wyoming, 2015 in Wyoming. It happened to be where the solar eclipse went over there. You remember that?
Yes, yeah.
And he was like, hey, we've had the system for 7 years. We want to use the toast integration. And there was a miscommunication on how much the cost of the toast integration was and that they need hardware. And he was like, look, I'm not saying you should, you know, give us this for free, but like it was communicated to us that there was no additional cost, and now it's going to cost $2,000. And then they said they discount it to $500. And just me, you know, I technically probably didn't need to be involved in that conversation, but just me responding to him shows them that, like, hey, I do care, you know.
Right.
And that's something I always want to do. Like I'm listening to the Sam Walton, you know, biography, and not to compare ourselves to Sam Walton, but like he was very similar in that he was open to the public coming into his office. But I'm sure, like, you got to.
For those that don't know, Sam Walton, owner of Walmart.
Yeah. Kind of
who died, left his fortune, I think, to 4 kids. And they were still, like, all 4 of them, the top 20 richest people in America for a long time. So it's like, that's how wealthy that guy was from caring.
The biography is you got to listen to it. Or I'm a listener of audiobooks.
Yeah, me too.
But I'm right at the tail end, but super competitive guy. Gave up golf because he broke his clubs against a tree. So
my kind of guy.
I can relate to that.
You know, I remember reading a book, not about Sam Walton, but about the Walmart brand and how everybody just thinks they're this, you know, evil corporate greed, blah, 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 blah. But they wrote the experience of going to their corporate office to try to pitch your product. So you walk in and you're like, hey man, we got these lighters to sell, and, you know, we can make them for $2. We'll wholesale them to you for $3 and you'll sell them for $5 or whatever. And then every product that goes into Walmart is still pitched in front of a board. And then the board comes back and they're like, Scott, we believe in you. We believe in your lighter, but here's what we're going to do. This piece we can actually get made cheaper for you. This we can do better. This we can do better. You're going to bring your cost down to $1.50 to make it. We're going to bring down the wholesale cost by 70 cents. But you're going to already make up 50 cents of that because of who we're going to hook you up with. Then we'll be able to sell it for $4 and we'll 5x the product sale. So it's like, you're making more money, we're getting a better margin, and the company's taking off because we're selling more. And it's like, oh, cool. So the consumer gets a cheaper product. Walmart makes a shit ton of money. The original distributor makes more money because they now develop the product cheaper. And it's like a win-win-win. And I read that book. I can't remember what it was. It wasn't Selling Happiness. That was the Anthony Shea Zappos book. But it was something along those lines. It's a great book about Walmart. Made me a fan, even though I don't shop there.
Well, it's also nice to hear when he got kicked in the nuts. He got kicked in the nuts a lot. In fact, the first location he ever opened was a Ben Franklin, and he crushed it. And he on his lease, he learned the hard lesson with leases that he didn't have the option to renew it after like 5 years. And the guy that owned the building saw how successful he was with the Ben Franklin concept that he didn't let him renew the lease. And he kept so he lost all that, like that business that he built up. But that's what kind of started the whole Walmart, well, fuck it, I'm going to go do it on my own,
Love it.
But that's life though. I mean, we could sit here and exchange war stories all day long, but I think that's the misconception a lot of people have is like, oh, those guys, yeah, they got 600 locations. That must, they're so lucky.
Yeah. No. In 5 years, when you do come here in your private jet to pick me up so we can go somewhere, people are gonna be like, oh, that must be nice. Scott has all these rich friends. Da, da, da. It's like, no, it's a 5-year investment in that friendship. And he had a 15-year, 20-year, 30-year investment in the business. And then he got to fly the private jet. So I always like to end these podcasts with 2 questions. Number 1 is, what are you most looking forward to going into the second half of 2024? This will come out August or September of 2024. So maybe the last quarter, like what are you personally excited about and what are you excited about for the company? And then what's your favorite movie and why, which I'm going to guess it's a sports movie, just who you are, but it doesn't have to be. So what are you most looking forward to? And then favorite movie and why?
So I set a contest with our company and our team for the second half of the year. And I love travel. Like travel is where I get my energy. So, not to give away the book, but at the very beginning of the book, I almost died in Austria after going skiing with my business partner, and I was excited that the product actually existed. So I set the goal for our sales team. If we hit our sales metric, there's a beautiful ski village in Austria called Flachau. And when we hit our sales goal for the year, I'm taking our entire sales team and our key members of the team, and we're gonna have a very good time in March in Flachau. So second part of the year, I'm looking forward to crushing our numbers so we can all celebrate in style in Austria, which everyone should go to an Austrian ski village at some point in their life. It's absolutely epic.
And if they don't hit the sales goal, do they get a set of steak knives or?
Well, the funny thing is they do get steak knives. That's part of the first year, gift. So, from not the idea came from John, but I engrave every single knife with either a funny or inspiring quote, and they get the first half of their homemaker on the first year and the second half on the second year. But I put a caveat in there that if depending on how far we missed the goal by, that they would have the option to purchase their plane ticket for a discount, something like that. So I don't want to be like
all or nothing.
And
yeah, they're gonna make it. They're gonna kill it. I can already tell.
I got to get some sales in there too. So, and then as far as a favorite movie, you actually posted something recently that refired me up about the movie Gladiator.
Oh, it's so good.
So I would say Gladiator. It's there's just something about, it's tough to say Gladiator without saying Braveheart, but those two, like I've watched those more than any other movie I think ever, just because I don't know, something about it just really. It's the underdog. It's the the fighter.
Yeah.
And now that Gladiator 2's coming out, and like whenever that is, I don't know when.
I think this fall.
Yeah. So
it's gonna be exciting.
That might be my best thing for the second half of the year too.
Do you know what people forget though about both of those movies? Because I've had a lot of people say like, oh, it's like Braveheart, Gladiator, 1A, 1B. Both of their wives are murdered. So it's like, I don't know why men are like, I can't wait to avenge the death of my wife. I'm like, how about she just doesn't die? That sounds like a good plan too. But yeah, I think there's something visceral about men of like, oh, you fucked with my wife. Now I'm going to burn down your country.
Well, Braveheart, Gladiator, they killed his kids too.
Yeah. I try to block that from my mind now that I have kids. I cannot watch anything sad about kids now that I have kids. Before I didn't even like register, but now that I have kids, and I'm sure especially experiencing some time in the hospital, I can't watch any of that shit. I just bawl like a little girl. I was watching Harry Potter 4 with Gabriel, and the last scene where Godry dies in the maze of horrors or whatever, and his dad's just screaming from the stands like, my son. I just started bawling, crying. And Gabriel's like, why are you crying? I'm like, you'll understand one day, buddy. And I don't even, when I saw the movie in the theater 15 years ago, whatever, I don't even remember that scene in the movie. But now as a father, it just hits you so hard. You're like, oh my God, the idea of losing my son. But I lost my shit. And I'm like, dude, I'm turning into like a 9-year-old child who cries and everything.
Oh, dude, like